السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام وكفى بها نعمة، ونصلي ونسلم ونبارك على النبي المبعوث رحمة للعالمين محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم واجعلنا منهم آمين. Inshallah, this evening between now and Salat al-Isha, we'll talk about the recent changes and events in the course of the war in Gaza and the events in the West Bank and Lebanon. We'll talk about the concept of victory, a continuation of what we discussed last week, and the implication of this war in the Zionists' entity in Palestine. To start with, there is a change. Anyone who follow the events and the statements of the politicians and the army in the Zionists' entity in Palestine can see that there is a change. What is this change? Why is this change and where it's heading? We'll discuss this, inshallah, this evening. As a background, you know that this war has been going for 9 months and started with the group from Gaza, mainly Hamas fighters, entering the settlements and the military bases and the military points around Gaza in a surprise attack that lasted for hours upon hours before the army came. By that time, they took over 3 military bases, 27 military checkpoints, many settlements, and they took with them more than 250 hostages and went back to Gaza at a time when the Israeli army was asleep and the leadership was asleep. There was double holiday there, so the choice of the time was significant. And it took, as I said, hours before any response came to the rescue of those who were in the surrounding of Gaza, those settlers. And the military, basically checkpoints and the military bases were destroyed, and many soldiers were killed. The bulk of those who were killed definitely are soldiers. And civilians also were killed, mostly by 2 sides. Civilians came from Gaza. After they saw that these doors are open, they start going, and many of them were looking for booties, something to take from those settlements. And they ended up burning some houses, and some of the killings for civilians took place. And another main source of killing was the Israeli army itself. This is according to the Israeli press. So basically what had happened is, when after 3 or 4 hours, planes start coming and they start shooting and bombing people on the ground, not distinguishing between who's a Gazan and who is an Israeli. At that point, the bulk of Hamas people were already back in Gaza. So we are talking about 3 hours. 3 full hours they had absolutely no Zionist army, police inside. Because those who were surrounding Gaza, protecting Gaza, all of them were annihilated in the first hour, including even the entrance between the 1948 and between Gaza, the so-called Ma'bar Eretz. Eretz was taken over a few minutes, and all the videos are there for people to see. So after 3 hours, the planes start bombing, and they killed many Israelis and many Gazans, civilians who were there. And at the same time, we have seen that since this, event when they said 1,400 Zionist military, police, and some civilians were killed, they start saying 1,400, and then they lower it to 1,200. But as a result, we have seen the defense minister, Gallant, basically saying, from now on, Gaza will not have any water, any fuel, any medicine, any food, and the whole world was watching. This statement was public. He said those people are, in his terms, human animals. And he said, and this is a war crime, because basically, according to the Israeli estimates, there's anywhere between 30 to 70,000 Hamasis. 30 to 70,000 Hamasis. And there are 2.3 million Gazans. And to give this more of an illustration of what I'm talking about, it's not just what the defense minister said from the first week, that we will not let food, medicine, water, fuel get into Gaza. We see even yesterday, the sister of the opposition leader, Lebed, he's the main opposition leader, beside Gantz, Lebed, his sister is a mental health expert. And she works with the citizens who have problems as a result of the war. Not just soldiers, civilians. She said, we are in a very serious situation as a society. She said, we no longer distinguish between a Gazan boy and one person from the Hamas Nukhba force. I mean, we see it on TV day and night. They just bomb and bomb and bomb. In the first 3 months or so, they killed about 20,000 people. And then when there was an outrage around the world, they start slowing the killing, but the killing continue. So she's saying, in their psyche, oh, we have accepted. We are not going to make a distinction between a Gazan boy, even, in my term, even if he's an infant or what have you, and between somebody who is from the Hamas Nukhba force. Nukhba is the elite force. So this is evident because they have made a strategic decision from day one that in Gaza they will not distinguish between a Hamas fighter and a Gazan, between an old and a young, men or women, child or adult. They made that decision, and therefore we saw what we saw. So what is new now? What is new is that the bulk of the establishment, when we say the establishment, it's the decision makers, the politicians, former prime ministers, former army chiefs, former Mossad chiefs. Mossad is the intelligence service of the, outside the country, like the CIA. The domestic is called Shin Bet. The Shin Bet chiefs, academics, and a large group of population saying this war needs to stop. And this sentiment, we have been hearing it for the last 2-3 months. It was not there in the first 2-3 months or the first 4 months. We did not hear in the first 3-4 months this sentiment among the establishment and the Zionist entity saying this war needs to stop. And Ohad Olmert, who is the former prime minister, was on GBS, CNN, and he was asked a question. He was asked a question. He said 2 days ago, some of the decision makers, former decision makers and people of weight in the Israeli society are telling Congress not to invite Netanyahu. Disinvite him. He does not represent the Israeli people. And this invitation to come on July 24th to talk to the Congress is dangerous because it will give him some clout in Israel when the government need to go and the war need to stop. And he said, when he asked, what do you think of this? He said, I am behind it. I support it because this war need to stop. Those who signed the letter, as I said, among them former Prime Minister, among them is the former head of the Mossad and other main figures in the establishment. They realize something that Netanyahu cannot come clearly and tell the people. That his promise in day one to achieve three things. One is finish Hamas. Hamas needs to be finished, eliminated. Secondly, return all the hostages. And third, de-radicalize Gaza. Meaning that get the population to reject this what he called radicalism. Meaning anti-Israel sentiment, of course based on either Islamic faith or in nationalism. What he cannot come clear to say, I cannot achieve those goals. After 9 months, I cannot achieve those goals. Now, 2 weeks ago, the head of the army, of course, with his permission, the official spokesman of the army put a statement saying we cannot eliminate Hamas. Hamas is an idea and it's deep-rooted in the hearts of the people. So eliminating Hamas is not an option. Wow. I mean, this is the official spokesman of the Zionist army after 9 months of war in Gaza, after controlling all of Gaza. Remember, 2 months ago they said, oh, Rafah. The hostages are in Rafah. The Hamas leadership in Rafah. As-Sinwar in Rafah. You know, all his bodies are in Rafah. We just get to Rafah. And, you know, Biden said, Rafah has a red line. We will not let you go into Rafah. It has to be limited operation. Still, they went into Rafah and the red line became orange and not much was done, except, just to be fair, that the Biden administration stopped supporting the Israeli army with 2,000 pounds bombs, so-called smart bombs. Now, this step was really exposed yesterday when an American official said that we have given the Israelis 2,000 bombs from the beginning of the war. I calculated it's 28 million pounds. So each Gazan, this is only one type of bombs, by the way. This is not all the bombs. I mean, we have seen in other estimation in around 6 months after the war that 70,000 tons of weapons were given to them, thrown in Gaza. So the criminality of the American administration is beyond belief. And when they took this decision about the 2,000 bombs, there's no doubt, make no doubt in your mind, that the target was the Arabs and the Muslims. When I say the Arabs, I mean the Muslims and the Christians. The Arabs and the Muslims in the US for the election. Because he realized he needs to say something, to do something, to tell the members of the Democratic Party and their supporters who are Muslims or Arabs, Christian or Muslims, especially in some of the key swing states like Michigan, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. He realized that unless he gets this vote, he will not win the election. So he came up against, say, we will not allow the invasion of Rafah, and we're going to suspend those 2,000 pound bombs, just for election purposes. And when the Israelis just went in anyway, nothing is done. And when Netanyahu started crying 2 weeks ago that the Americans are slowing their weapons delivery to Israel, the American administration and the State Department, the Defense Department, officials say, we do not know what he's talking about. We have been sending arms. There was no interruption. And within this context came this statements that Reuters and others have published it, that 2,000 bombs, 2,000 bombs, 17,000 of them. Let me correct myself. 14,000 bombs, each one weighed 2,000 pounds, total of 28 million pounds. This is one type of bombs that the American administration said we have delivered. Now, after all this support and after the $14 billion and after all this political support at the UN with veto after veto after veto, and all this protection and trying to protect Netanyahu and Gallant from being arrested by the ICC, International Criminal Court, and still the Zionists in Palestine and their supporters in the US complain that the US is not fully supporting Israel. You know, this is the mentality, as we said, of the victim mentality always, the complaint mentality. I mean, you know, the only thing that left is just send the US Army, full 200,000 or so, and be there. So that's one aspect, that this US support, they feel that we cannot stand without the US support. That's very clear. And this is, again, a statement to what Allah said in the Quran, that they are always going to live in a humiliated status in the world, except by a support from Allah or support from the people. إِلَّا بِحَبْلٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَحَبْلٍ مِّنَ النَّاسِ. They cannot stand on their own. Remember, only a year ago, like this time that we are living in, this time a year ago, and I had noticed it when I went to Palestine in the summer and in Ramadan last year. The Palestinian people almost gave up on hope, because Indonesia was on the verge of normalizing with the Zionists. Saudi was working hard and quickly to normalize with the Zionists. It was a matter of weeks, if not months, weeks. And it was clear when Ibn Salman, Muhammad Ibn Salman, went on CNN, because they were reporting the Saudi media that the Saudis are upset because the Israelis are slow to talk about a Palestinian state. So they said, therefore, the Saudis are slowing this process of normalization and they are taking a strong stand. This is the Saudi media, Al-Arabiya, which the Arab called it Al-Ibriya, the Hebrew. Muhammad ibn Salman came the same week on CNN and he was asked about this slow. He said, no, we did not slow. We meet every day and every day we are making progress. So basically he clearly said the Saudi media is lying and we really do not care about anything else. We need to normalize and move on. This was the situation last year. The Israelis were talking about this investment. Netanyahu was saying we are the second startup nation in the world after the US. They were talking about this technological advancement that really behind the US and ahead of many countries in the world. That this democratic moral, all this nonsense, this was just a year ago. And they were flying high because the Arabs have given up on Palestine. And the Muslims were detached. I'm talking about the governments. Long time ago when the Arabs said, leave Palestine to us. And Abbas and his people are bigger traitors than others. They were killing their own Palestinian people in the West Bank to please the Israelis. Remember Abbas, when he was told about this security arrangement with the Israelis, means the Palestinian Authority is working for the Israelis, to arrest the people that the Israelis do not want and to uncover whatever plans against the Zionists. They told him about this security arrangement. He said, this is a holy, muqaddas. This is holy, meaning, just like your salah, your fasting, it's holy. We need to hold to it. And one of the magazines, in fact, saying that the Israelis are flooding the beaches of Tel Aviv and those cities and Suqna, enjoying the summer and enjoying their time, enjoying the big money that they're getting and enjoying the bonuses, and they really have no idea what's going on with the Palestinians, and they don't care. And they don't care. Because basically, we are living the high life. Yes, at the expense of others, at the expense of the occupation, at the expense of the criminality of the settlers then and this and that. The situation on Gaza and the West Bank was terrible all the time. But the world did not care and did not listen. When this issue, Palestine comes, it has been going on for 75 years, what's new? Well, October 7th, there was something new. The whole thing flip-flopped to the point that it really implicates every aspect, every fabric of the society in this Zionist entity. It just changed everything. We are here 9 months after the fact, after killing about 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza and arresting tens of thousands, after 10,000 or more who are under the rubble, other than those 40,000, and 70,000 who were injured, and more than 65% of the Gaza housing is totally destroyed, and others are partially destroyed. And the people of Gaza have moved from one corner to another, 3 and 4 and 5 times. When the Israeli says move from this area, that's a safe area, and then they will bomb the safe area. And after all of this, they realize that you cannot finish this war. You have to have another way and other means. And those people in the establishment realize this very well. Because now they are realizing that how long we can rely on the army reserve. They had to extend the army reserve. So now the people who are working in high tech, low tech, and no tech are in the army. So the economy is in shambles. And some of you have seen last maybe 6 weeks ago when Intel announced that we're going to build a 25 billion factory in Israel, and that the Israeli government will give them incentives of about $3 billion. And the politicians, Netanyahu crowd and gang, talking about, this confidence in the Israeli economy and in the Israeli future, and made it, something big out of the ordinary. Well, last week Intel said, no more. We are not pursuing the project. We are not pursuing the project. Did you hear anything from the politicians? Absolutely not. Because they have bragged big time that shows the hope. Well, there's no hope. This is what their politicians are saying. If this war continue, it will not end. Because Hamas is making their own weapons in Gaza. They do not need to wait to get something from outside. And the Gazans have nothing to lose. If they will attain the Shahada, that's what they are seeking. And we have seen within the Israeli military, people saying, no more, we will not serve. Haaretz have an interview with 3 soldiers who said, we are not going to go back to Gaza. Regardless, if they put them in jail or what have you, we're not going to go back. One of them said, the army asked me to torch 3 residential buildings. residential buildings standing to torch them, put them on fire. He said, I will not go back and do this. Another one, he said, I was in Gaza watching when the planes bomb. He said, whole buildings with so many people in them without recognizing who's Hamas, who's young, who's old, who's an infant, who's what, a man, who's a woman, who's what. He said, I will not go back to Gaza. And this thing is on the increase. So those people who are saying this, plus of course the American administration, which is trying to rescue the Israelis from themselves, saying this thing cannot continue. In fact, the fact that the Israelis sustained 9 months of war by itself is something. Is something. From my perspective, if it was not for the shock of October 7 that flipped-flopped this whole situation from a political, a military, a social, an image perspective, and so on and so forth that we'll discuss later, I don't think that they can sustain this. Imagine, the country is about 10 million people. 2.5 million are Palestinians, Arabs, meaning Christians and Muslims, who are citizens of the state. Those people were left in their homes in 1948. So they became Israeli citizens. This is not the West Bank, this is not Gaza. We are talking about the Palestinians who stayed in the land of the 1948. About 2.3 million, 2.4 million, give or take. At one point, they had 15 members of parliament in the Knesset, the Arabs, Christian and Muslims. There were 15 members out of 120. 15 members out of the 120. So take out the 2.5 million or so, you are left with 7.5 million. According to the Israeli Immigration Office, 550,000 Israelis left Israel in the first 6 months and did not come back. 550,000. Out of 7.5 million, more than 500,000 left and did not come back. The economic situation is so desperate that the government has enacted a law. They will take from the salary of every worker in the country. They will take 1 day salary and put it in the budget of defense. And the US, of course, $14.5 billion. Other countries are giving. But the situation is not going in the right direction. Then there is the contradiction within the society, which is being enlarged between the religious and the secular. The Western Jews, Ashkenazis, and the Sephardic, the Arabs and North Africa Jews. We have seen 10 days ago when Arieh Dir'i, who's a Moroccan Jew, who's the head of Shas party, which is basically the people, Jews from the Middle East, that he have a law. He want to enact a law that give him the authority to appoint rabbis in the local areas, in the towns, in the neighborhoods, so that he's going to get money to his own people and to his own party. And Netanyahu even cut a deal with the Arab representative, Abbas, not the other Abbas in Ramallah. This is another Abbas. May Allah cure us from the Abbases too, those two Abbases. So this other Abbas cut a deal with Netanyahu. I'm going to vote for it. I'm going to vote for it because he needed desperately to get it. Then Netanyahu's own party revolted and they said we will not go for it, so he withdrew it before the vote. Because Dir'i said if it's voted against, we're going to pull our people and the government will fall down. Then came a bigger shock when the Supreme Court mandate on the army to recruit the extremely religious or the very religious or the Orthodox, whatever you want to call them. Because when Ben Gurion came as a prime minister in the first cabinet of this Zionist state in the late 40s, eventually there was a deal that the religious Jews who spent their time studying the Torah will not enter the army. They did not want to enter the army. They were totally rejected the idea. And he cut the deal with them. From that point until now, 75 years, they did not serve in the army, except if one of them choose to. Although the rest are obliged, there's a draft. It's not that you're going to go for a few years. Every year, you're going to go for a few weeks. That's the army. That's how they function. I mean, you will see army at the gates of Al-Aqsa. You will see an army at checkpoints, which are more than 50, 60 checkpoints in the West Bank. You see the army in the cities. You see the army in the bases. You see in the army in the borders of Lebanon. You see the army in the borders of Syria. You will see the army on the borders of Egypt. You see the army on the borders of Gaza, and so on and so forth. Where are they going to get all of these things? So they have this so-called force that basically people who go, just like here, I think something's close to the National Guard, where you go for a time, and then every year you go for a few weeks. Now, so the chief rabbi, Rabbi Yosef, said that we would rather die than go to the army. Meaning his followers, he's very old, his followers would rather die or leave the country. I mean, you have those statements coming from the rabbinical sources. Some of them said we would rather die than go to the army. Others say we would rather leave the country than go to the army. Yusuf's statement was specifically we would rather leave the country than go into the army. Others said we would rather die than go into the army. And today, if you watch the demonstration, you saw the Haredim, those religious people, demonstrating, and the army and the police, I should say police, beating them up. And guess what? They were belting the police with stones. Copying what the Palestinians do in the West Bank and Gaza. And they were using stones, belting them with stones, and saying that we will never enlist. So there are many contradictions within the society that are coming more and more. There's the super rich and there are the very poor. Of course, when I say very poor, not in the standard of Gaza, that's another standard. Not in the standard of the West Bank, that is another standard. So from this perspective, what we can see is that those factors, plus others, are pushing the establishment and the Zionist entity to say the war must end. We cannot finish Hamas with the war. We have to use other means. Now you ask a question. No, بدنا إياها. هذه بدنا إياها. حط هذه طرفها في هذيك. الطرف اللي عندك. Somebody may think that somebody did this intentionally. No, no, it happens once in a while. But we have, alhamdulillah, an alternative. Wireless is a convenient, but it's not always necessary to do. So Netanyahu have, as we talked about last week with some elaboration, that the far right, Ibn Gfir and Smotrich, had a plan to take over the West Bank. They said that since the Europeans are recognizing a Palestinian state, we have a plan so that the West Bank will not be part of this Palestinian state. And the plan is transfer the authority in the West Bank from the army to the civilian authority under Smotrich. And the New York Times have a video, an audio, and this was not denied, that Smotrich said this is the plan and we start implementing it. And indeed you can see that some of the high officers in the West Bank that run the West Bank became under civilian leadership, under military. From 1967 until last week, the military is in charge of the West Bank and Gaza. The military is still in charge of Gaza, but the West Bank is changing. So they have this plan to take over the West Bank and basically annex it without announcing it. Just like the way that Trump gave them the authority to annex the Golan Heights, they're going to annex West Bank, Jerusalem, and the main cities, Nablus, Tul Karam, Jenin, Khalil, Bir, Ramallah, all those cities, plus the villages, they will be annexed and be part of Israel. So when those countries keep recognizing a Palestinian state, it's immaterial. This is already part of Israel. But they will be second-hand citizens. They will not have the right to vote, and they will not have citizenship. They will be a very more clear apartheid system in Palestine. And Netanyahu knows well, so it was under his direction, because that's what Smotrich said, Netanyahu is with us. But we cannot clearly say it because the US and others will be against us. So they are doing this plan at the same time, because they are telling Netanyahu either will do or this government will fall. And everyone who is in charge of a party that's part of the government knows that they have the ability to bring the government down. In fact, Ibn Gfir and Smotrich are saying, unless you attack Lebanon, we'll bring this government down. If you accept Biden's proposal, we'll bring this government down. I mean, they put ultimatum. Also, 2 weeks ago, Smotrich, who is in charge of the money, finance minister, he said that I'm going to take the money that belongs to the Palestinian Authority that the Israelis have and give it to the families of the Zionists in Palestine. And the US issued official statements saying basically this money belongs to the Palestinians and it needs to be given to the Palestinians to spend it the way that they want to spend it. And then he came with another thing. I'm gonna disassociate, de-link the Israeli banks from the Palestinian banks, which will kill the banking system in Palestine. Last year, $13 billion went through the banking system in Palestine. $13 billion. So this will kill the banking system, and basically whatever left of an economy in Palestine, there's not much of it, will be dead. This was about 10 days ago. Yesterday, to our surprise, Smotrich came and said, I'm going to extend the relationship with the banks and we're going to give some money to the Palestinian Authority, because if we do not do it, the Palestinian Authority will disintegrate, will fall down, and we will be harmed. And by the way, this is not his idea. This is what Netanyahu is telling him, that we have to keep the Palestinian Authority on artificial legs. Not powerful, just enough to help us protect this Israeli entity. And that's why, as I said, there is this change that within a few days or a week or two, at the maximum, Netanyahu will announce that the war phase, the second phase, especially in Rafah, is coming to an end. And the army will relocate, and they will only do surgical attacks. Meaning, if they know that this building has a Hamas, they will attack that building. If they know there are some hostages there, they will try to go and get them. Because remember, there's still more than 120 hostages there. And they were able to get a good number of hostages only through the US mediation, while freeing Palestinian prisoners. You know those prisoners that Ben Gvir said today, he is proposing to the Knesset, believe it or not, that the Palestinian prisoners should be shot in their head. He said, meanwhile, I'm not giving them food till the time comes that we kill them. This is a minister in the government. I mean, imagine this is happening in another country. There will be an outrage. And he's proposing this through the Knesset. Of course, it will not fly. Because they know their image already deteriorates in the world. I mean, imagine in the US, a major publication like The Nation have this article, the golden age of the Jews in America is coming to an end. This is the most widely circulated article among the Jews in America. They said that those days are gone because the image of Israel, the image of Zionism, and in some areas, which should not be, the image of Jews in general. And I think that's problematic because, as we said, even in our homeland, as an ummah, as Muslims, we never have an issue with the Jews. And many of the Jews do not agree and do not accept this Zionism ideology. They are saying they are the one who have got all this mess in there because they just think that all this land should be to us. We need to move the people of the West Bank to Jordan and the people of Gaza to Egypt, and this land should be ours. Ibn Gvir already said, I'm going to settle in Gaza. He's going to build the settlements and he live in it in Gaza. So if the US, if the image in the US, if the Jews are saying, you know, we have issues, and they start contemplating leaving, and they starting doubting the future of their children in this country, which nobody doubt that this is the most supportive, friendly, money-wise, and they, you know, suck the blood and the sweat of the taxpayer to support Zionism and the Israeli entity all those years. And they are saying that their golden age is coming to an end. I mean, take this one. That's another bombshell. This past week, Germany enacted a new law, which they have been discussing for a while. To become a German citizen, you will be asked a question. Do you accept Israeli right to exist? If you say yes, you pass and you can get the citizenship. If you say no, you will not get the citizenship. That's official. This is like, you know, the parliament have approved this law that if you want to apply for German citizenship, you have to say that Israel have the right to exist. What does this mean? It means that the Zionists there keep crying, of course, about the Holocaust and what the Germans done to them. They kept pushing until they get these things. While in the US, they are trying to get something similar, not that far, but something similar, that anyone who criticizes Israel will be against the law. And if you have a non-profit organization, it could be affected. They have been trying to push those laws. So far, it did not succeed. But they will keep pushing. So with this entity, that people are asked to accept that this entity you accept that they have the right to exist in Palestine, otherwise you will not get citizenship. And if you have a history of talking something that they consider anti-Semitic, you're already out. You cannot get citizenship of Germany. We are not talking about Israeli citizenship. We are talking about citizenship in Germany. You want another one? I mean, I know each one of them is the US Congress have passed a law in the past 2 days. I'm not sure that if Biden did sign it or not yet. But they passed the law with a majority. Only 2 Republicans did not vote for it, and a good number of Democrats joined the Republicans. It forbids on US officials to say how many people were killed in Gaza. I know, do you think I am making this thing up? This law was approved. It became a law if Biden signed it. It was attached to the defense bill. It was attached to the defense bill that it says it forbids any US official. If you have in any capacity served in the US government, you cannot say with your tongue that 40,000 people, Palestinians, were killed in Gaza. You cannot say it. You cannot say 70,000 Palestinians were injured. You cannot say it. Why? Because they do not want the American people to hear the truth. If Hisham Sarsour say it, I mean, there are many, people watch it and hear and online and share it with others. But American people may or may not accept it from those people when they talk. But when a US official says, and you have seen last week, when the Israelis, there's a famine in Gaza, people are dying from hunger because the Israelis are holding the food still. And when the Israeli government says we are not to blame, the UN is to blame, UNRWA is to blame. The US representative in UN stood and criticized the Zionists, saying basically you are the reason. Because this famine is because of you. Well, I'll tell you, if these laws keep going, she will be Shaitan Akhras. She will be a silent Satan, as said in the hadith. Shaitan Akhras. She will not speak. She will not say, because it's against the government. It's against the law of Congress to say such things. Why all of these things are happening? Because the whole world went upside down on this Zionist entity. Militarily, they are in trouble. Economically, they are in trouble. Socially, they are saying mental illness is all over the place. And I just mentioned what the mental illness expert, the sister of Lebed, the main opposition leader of Israel, said that the situation got so bad that we do not accept, or we do not make a distinction between a child in Gaza and between Hamas elite forces. Yeah. Just kill. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, world, people around the world, universities, countries. We have seen countries severing relationship with the Zionists. We have seen countries, European countries now established and saying, we recognize a Palestinian state. And we have seen more and more criticizing the Zionism and Zionist entity in Palestine. We have seen the French and the Germans, officials, saying that if the ICC issue a warrant, an arrest warrant against Netanyahu, and he comes, we will arrest him. I mean, he lost it. How could Germany saying, they will arrest me? Yeah, they will arrest you, because that's the law. Yeah, in your country there's no law. I mean, that's what they have been killing and maiming Palestinians all those years and nobody cared. But in Germany and France, they already signed. So if he, as a criminal, comes and the ICC issued this arrest warrant, they will arrest him. Of course, last week, Mother Britain, this time, not Mother USA, Mother Britain have filed a friend of court statement with the ICC saying that they want to petition against the arrest warrant for Netanyahu and Gallant. And the court gave them until July 12th to present their case. So again, إِلَّا بِحَبْلٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَحَبْلٍ مِّنَ النَّاسِ. So those ropes of support, either from the US or now from England, and we have seen Netanyahu standing and saying only the US can prevent those international courts from doing what they are doing. And we have seen US senators and congressmen going to The Hague and threatening the judges, if you are to take this, we will do this for you and for your families. Wars. Even the head of the Israeli intelligence went to the previous judge, chief judge, who was a woman from Africa. She was married to a Moroccan man. And they trapped her husband with some pictures of women with women. And they went to her and said, we're gonna expose you and your husband. We will do this, and threaten her and her family unless she back off criticizing and going against Israel. This was in the Israeli media. And the Western media picked it up. Brothers, sisters, those are criminals. This image of the most moral army in the world, the most moral, the democratic country, the only democratic country, the values and the Western values and absolute utter nonsense. Those are a bunch of thieves and criminals who came and stole the land of Palestine. No more, no less. Why? Because the West have a Jewish problem. The Western world does not want the Jews. And that's why in Europe, when they want to get rid of them, they send them to Palestine. Poland at the time in 1948 sent them 1 million bullets. Please take the Jews, take them. And they said to the Jews, here's 1 million bullets, just keep away from us. Not to mention Germany and other countries. And their fate, now it's not just the Zionists in Palestine, as I said, in the US and in Europe, it does not look good, and they know it. There was election in France today, the first wave of election, and there's a second round. And guess what? The Israelis vote for the extreme right. Those Zionists and some of those who go with them, the Jewish voters in France, they vote with the extreme right, although the extreme right is anti-Semitic. I mean, the Israeli media is saying this is troublesome, that we are aligning ourselves with the far right. Why? Because the far left and the left is pro-Palestine. The far right is anti-Semitic, so they would rather go with the anti-Semitics rather than the middle or the left. But again, they are preparing their bags to leave. And they are questioning their existence even in Canada. Even in Canada. Now, Canada last week put restrictions on leaders of the settler movement in the West Bank, and they went berserk. Now, you notice I'm talking about England, Germany, Spain, accepting, Palestinian state, Ireland, and all those, Middle and South America. I'm not talking about Arab countries, because you have heard me frequently. Jordan, Saudi, Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, and Morocco are conspiring with the Zionists against the Ummah. Not just against Palestine and Gaza, against the Ummah. They are becoming tools in their hands. When a member of parliament will stand to thank Jordan and Saudi and Emirates for the thousands of trucks that deliver all sorts of goods from ships that goes to Abu Dhabi and go from Emirates to Saudi by trucks, and Saudi to Jordan, go where? To the Israelis. When your brothers and sisters in Gaza are dying from hunger, thank them. They thank them. Make no mistake, they are conspiring. As I said, I think we should call the guy Muhammad ibn Mordechai, the son of Solomon. Muhammad is not the name he deserved. Muhammad ibn Zayd, call him Mordechai, the son of Zaydun. هم العدو فاحذرهم. I mean, how could you, after all of this, Abbas, how could you, after all of this, still talk about this holy agreement? When you are for the Zionists no more than dirt, nothing, zil, you do not exist except if you serve us. For the sake of time, shifting to Lebanon, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, we were saying that it's a slim chance that there will be a war in Lebanon. But now the chance is there. Yes, it's not a big chance, but it's there. And Netanyahu have said that they want to move some of the forces from Gaza to the north. Of course, Israeli politicians, former politicians, are saying that if there's a war, we can obliterate, Lebanon, just finish. But at the same time, they will inflict so much damage in the Zionist entity that will take years to recover. They have like 150,000 missiles, different ranges. That's why the Israelis are threatening with unconventional weapons, i.e. nuclear weapons, saying we're going to use unconventional weapons. Because if the Hezbollah is allowed, it will be mutual destruction. And Iran said they also going to get into this. The Iraqi, even for militias, saying if this war started, we're going to bomb. And the Houthis are saying if this war started, we're going to bomb. So that's why the US is telling the Israelis, don't start it. Let this low-level skirmishes be on the borders. No more, no less. Let it keep going at a low base. The Israeli media this week mentioned that Egypt and the United Arab Emirates have agreed to participate in a force to control Gaza. This will be a disaster. This will be a disaster. Some naive people will say, well, having those people instead of the Israelis, isn't it best? Not really. Because you are rescuing the Zionists. The Zionists in deep trouble. The army now is facing tremendous challenges. Their service has been extended. Their casualties are mounting. Their injuries are mounting. Their families are demonstrating by the tens of thousands, by the hundreds of thousands. The society is facing tremendous amount of challenges because of the war in Gaza. And for the Arab countries to come and say, we'll take care of Gaza, just to stay on the borders, there will be a conflict. And may Allah forbid, there will be bloodshed. Because those people, look what the Emirates have done in Yemen. And look what the Saudis have done in Yemen. For 7-8 years, total destruction. And did they achieve anything? No, not at all. The joke the other day is Muhammad ibn Salman, Mikhail, Mordechai, the son of Zaydun, or in this case, the son of Solomon, is going to China to beg them to interfere with Yemeni Houthis to stop bombing the ships that are pro-Israel or the Israeli ships, which have affected much of the Israeli economy because many of their harbors are doing not much. No ships are coming through the Red Sea that are for the Israelis. So this move is very dangerous. And this is an Israeli press that Egypt and the UAE accepted to take position in Gaza in this regard. This came after the secret meeting that we discussed 2 or 3 weeks ago in Bahrain, where American generals, Zionist generals, Egyptian generals, Jordanian generals, Saudi generals, United Arab generals, and Bahrain generals met to talk about this. And of course, you know, for me, it's a joke to talk about Bahraini generals. What Bahraini generals? Where do they get those generals from? I mean, they have the demonstration a few years back. They could not control the demonstration. They imported 2,000 people from army from Saudi to control the demonstration in Bahrain. Where did those generals gain the experience? And where did the generals in the Emirates, where did they come from? Saudi generals? I mean, that's laughable. That's laughable, absolutely laughable. The thing is, they did not invite Qatar or Morocco. Qatar, we understand, because they do not trust Qatar in this regard, and Qatar can expose it. In fact, it was the Qatari newspaper, Al-Arabi Al-Jadid, that mentioned that the purpose of the meeting was to control Gaza after the war. It's time for Salat al-Isha, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. And I know it's the 4th of July next week, but we will have our session, inshallah. If you are on travel, you can see us live at the same time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the khair to the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength and the right directions to follow this Quran and the Sunnah, to come back to where we belong as an ummah. May Allah alleviate the suffering from the people of Gaza, Palestine, the people of Sudan, the people, Muslims of India, and the Muslims of China, Muslims of the Rohingya. Allahumma ameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. الله خير وبارك الله فيكم.